What happens when a beloved late-night host comes face-to-face with royal entitlement gone wrong? What unfolds when years of carefully constructed public image crumble in real time on national television? You won't believe what transpired last night on Late Night with Seth Meyers when Prince Harry sat down for what seemed like a standard promotional appearance, only to reveal a side of himself that left viewers stunned and the host visibly shaken. Before we get into this incredible story, make sure you hit that subscribe button and drop a comment below, because you're not going to believe what unfolds when the cameras started rolling and the Royal Harry emerged from behind the carefully crafted PR facade. The atmosphere in Studio 8G felt different from the moment Prince Harry walked onto the late night set. While Seth Meyers maintained his characteristic warmth and professionalism, there was an unmistakable tension radiating from his guest that experienced crew members would later describe as unlike anything they'd witnessed in years of television production. Harry's usually practiced smile seemed forced, his posture rigid, and his eyes carried a coldness that stood in stark contrast to his public persona. Seth opened with his typical blend of humor and respect, acknowledging Harry's recent charitable work and upcoming projects. "It's great to have you here, Harry. I know you've been incredibly busy with your foundation work and various media ventures. How are you finding life in California these days?" The question, innocent enough on the surface, seemed to strike a nerve. Harry's response was measured but carried an undertone that made the studio audience shift uncomfortably in their seats. "Well, Seth, it's been quite the journey, hasn't it? Moving away from certain constraints and expectations. Finally being able to speak my truth without having to worry about protocol or keeping certain people happy." Seth, ever the professional, attempted to steer the conversation toward more positive territory. "That's wonderful that you're finding your voice. Your work with mental health awareness has been particularly impactful. Can you tell us about some of the initiatives you're most passionate about?" But Harry wasn't interested in discussing his charitable endeavors. Instead, he leaned forward in his chair, his voice taking on an edge that sent ripples of unease through the studio. "You know what I'm most passionate about, Seth? Truth. Honesty. Calling out the hypocrisy and the lies that have been allowed to fester for far too long. People think they know the story, but they have no idea what really goes on behind closed doors." The camera caught Seth's subtle reaction, a slight tightening around his eyes, the way his smile became more fixed. Years of interviewing experience had taught him to recognize when a guest was veering into dangerous territory, and every instinct was telling him that Harry was about to cross lines that shouldn't be crossed on live television. "I think everyone appreciates your commitment to transparency," Seth said carefully. "But I'm curious about the positive impact you're hoping to make going forward. Your Netflix projects, for instance, seem to focus on inspiring stories." Harry's laugh was sharp, almost bitter. "Inspiring stories? Is that what we're calling them now? You want to know what's inspiring, Seth? It's watching people finally wake up to the reality of what institutions really are. It's seeing the masks come off and the truth emerge, no matter how uncomfortable it makes certain people." The studio audience, initially excited to see the prince, was now noticeably quiet. The energy had shifted from anticipation to something approaching anxiety. Seasoned television viewers could sense that something was going very wrong, but no one could have predicted just how dark the conversation was about to become. Seth made another attempt to redirect. "Speaking of institutions, you've been quite vocal about your desire to modernize and reform various systems. What changes do you think are most important?" This time, Harry's response was immediate and loaded with venom. "Reform? Seth, you can't reform something that's rotten to its core. You can't polish a turd and call it gold. Some institutions need to be completely dismantled, not reformed. The people running them, the people who've been protected and enabled for decades, they need to be exposed for what they really are." The words hung in the air like a threat. Seth's professional demeanor remained intact, but those who knew him well could see the concern flickering across his features. This wasn't the Harry who had appeared on other talk shows, charming audiences with stories about his children and his new life. This was someone else entirely, someone angry, resentful, and seemingly intent on using this platform to settle scores. "I think many people share your passion for accountability," Seth said, his voice steady but his body language betraying his growing discomfort. "But I'm wondering if we might talk about some of the more positive developments in your life. Your family, your new projects, the work you're doing in California. Harry's eyes flashed with something that looked disturbingly like contempt. Positive developments? You mean the way my family has been treated by the institution? The way my wife was systematically destroyed by people who were supposed to protect her? The way my children will grow up knowing exactly what their grandfather's family really thinks of them? The mention of his family caused a visible shift in the studio. This wasn't just celebrity gossip or typical royal drama. This was a man using his platform to make deeply personal and potentially damaging accusations against his own family on live television. Seth's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly, and for the first time since the interview began, he looked directly into the camera as if considering whether to cut to commercial. "Harry," Seth said, his voice taking on a firmer tone, "I think we all understand that family relationships can be complicated, but maybe we should focus on complicated." Harry interrupted, his voice rising. "That's what we're calling systematic racism and institutional cruelty now? Complicated? You sit there in your comfortable studio, making jokes about politics and celebrities, and you think you understand complicated? You have no idea what it's like to watch your family be destroyed by people who smile to your face while they plant stories in the press." The accusation hung in the air like a bomb waiting to explode. Seth's face remained composed, but his hands gripped the edge of his desk slightly tighter. The audience was completely silent now, sensing that they were witnessing something unprecedented. A complete breakdown of the carefully choreographed dance between host and guest that defines late-night television. "I think everyone here has tremendous respect for what you and your family have gone through," Seth said carefully. "But I'm not sure this is the right forum for..." "The right forum?" Harry's voice was now openly hostile. "When exactly is the right forum, Seth? When the institution decides it's convenient? When the press decides they've sold enough papers? When my family has been completely destroyed and there's nothing left to salvage?" The words came out like bullets, each one more venomous than the last. Seth looked directly at Harry, his professional mask finally starting to slip as he realized that this interview had moved far beyond anything he could control or contain. The prince wasn't just having a bad day, he was actively using this platform to wage war, and Seth was beginning to understand that he and his show were about to become casualties in a battle they never signed up for. As the tension in the studio reached a breaking point, viewers at home were witnessing the complete dissolution of royal composure in real time, and Seth Meyers was about to discover just how far Prince Harry was willing to go to make his point, no matter who got hurt in the process. Seth took a deep breath, clearly making a decision that would define the remainder of this disastrous interview. His voice, when he spoke, carried the authority of someone who had spent years navigating difficult conversations with world leaders, celebrities, and politicians. "Harry, I understand you're passionate about these issues, but I have a responsibility to my audience and to this show. We can't use this platform to make unsubstantiated accusations against your family members who aren't here to defend themselves." The words hit Harry like a physical blow. His face flushed red, and for a moment, the carefully constructed facade of the progressive prince completely crumbled. "Unsubstantiated? Are you calling me a liar, Seth? Are you telling me that my lived experience, my wife's trauma, the systematic destruction of my family, are you saying that's all made up?" The studio felt like it was holding its breath. Camera operators continued filming, but many were glancing nervously at the control room, wondering if someone would finally pull the plug on this unprecedented meltdown. Seth's producers, watching from behind the glass, were frantically debating whether to cut to commercial or let this train wreck continue to unfold. "I'm not calling you anything," Seth replied, his voice steady but firm. "I'm simply saying that this show has standards, and we don't provide a platform for personal attacks against people who can't respond. If you want to discuss your advocacy work or your projects, I'm happy to continue. But if you're here to settle personal scores, then maybe we should wrap this up." Harry's eyes blazed with fury. "Personal scores? This isn't about personal scores, Seth. This is about justice. This is about holding people accountable for their actions. You sit there in your ivory tower, making jokes about politics while real people suffer real consequences from the decisions made by these institutions." "I think we're done here," Seth said, starting to remove his microphone. It was a move that shocked everyone in the studio. In all his years of hosting, Seth had never ended an interview early. But Harry wasn't finished. Oh, we're done? Just like that? You invite me on your show, you ask me about my life, about my family, about my experiences, and then when I tell you the truth, the real truth, you decide we're done? This is exactly the problem, Seth. This is exactly why these institutions continue to get away with what they do. People like you, people with platforms, people with influence, you all protect each other. The accusation was like a slap in the face. Seth's composure finally cracked, and for the first time since the interview began, genuine anger flashed across his features. I'm not protecting anyone, Harry. I'm trying to maintain some semblance of professionalism on a show that millions of people watch. What you're doing right now, this isn't brave, it's not truthful, it's just cruel. The word cruel seemed to push Harry over an edge that no one knew existed. He leaned forward in his chair, his voice dropping to a dangerous whisper that somehow carried more menace than his earlier shouting. Cruel? You want to know what's cruel, Seth? Cruel is watching your pregnant wife be driven to the brink of suicide by an institution that's supposed to protect her. Cruel is having your father choose his image over his son's well-being. Cruel is watching your own brother, participate in the destruction of your family for the sake of maintaining a lie. The studio was dead silent. Even the camera operators had stopped moving, transfixed by the raw venom in Harry's voice. Seth's face had gone pale, and he was staring at Harry with something approaching disbelief. This wasn't just a celebrity meltdown. This was a man publicly eviscerating his own family on live television, and doing it with a calculated precision that was genuinely disturbing. Harry, stop, Seth said quietly. Just stop. Whatever issues you have with your family, this isn't the way to resolve them. This isn't helping anyone. But Harry was beyond reason now. Help? You think I'm here for help? I'm here because people need to know the truth. They need to understand what these institutions really are, what they do to people, how they destroy lives to protect their precious image. My grandmother spent 70 years propping up a system that protects predators and destroys anyone who threatens their narrative. The mention of the Queen, Harry's own grandmother, sent a visible shock through the studio. Several audience members gasped audibly, and Seth's expression shifted from anger to something approaching horror. Harry, you need to stop talking. Right now. Why? Because it makes you uncomfortable? Because it doesn't fit the narrative you want to present on your nice, safe little show? You want to know what makes me uncomfortable, Seth? The fact that I spent 30 years of my life protecting people who wouldn't cross the street to help me. The fact that I watched them destroy my mother, and then I watched them try to destroy my wife, and I did nothing. The words were coming faster now, each one more damaging than the last. Seth looked like he wanted to physically restrain Harry, but knew that any intervention would only make things worse. This is enough. We're going to commercial, and when we come back, we're going to have a different conversation or we're going to end this interview. Harry laughed, but there was no humor in it. A different conversation? What would you like to talk about, Seth? My charity work? My Netflix deals? My happy little life in California? All of that is built on the bones of what that institution did to my family. Every dollar I make, every project I do, every breath I take is a reminder of what they stole from me. The camera caught Seth's hands shaking slightly as he gripped his desk. Years of experience had taught him to handle difficult guests, but nothing had prepared him for this level of personal destruction being broadcast to millions of viewers. You're destroying yourself right now, Harry. On live television, in front of millions of people. Is this really what you want? What I want? Harry's voice rose again, filling the studio with rage. What I want is for people to see these institutions for what they really are. What I want is for the world to understand that the fairy tale is a lie, that the people they worship are monsters, and that anyone who gets in their way gets crushed. Seth stood up from his desk, a move that surprised everyone in the studio. I'm not going to let you use my show to destroy your family, Harry. I'm not going to be part of whatever this is. We're done. But as Seth began to walk away from his desk, Harry's voice followed him, carrying across the studio like a curse. You're just like all the rest of them, Seth. You pretend to care about truth and justice, but when it gets uncomfortable, when it threatens your comfortable little world, you run. You're complicit in their system. The accusation hit its mark. Seth stopped walking and turned back to face Harry, his face flushed with anger. I'm complicit? I'm complicit because I won't let you use my show to publicly humiliate your family? Because I won't give you a platform to spread poison? You came here as my guest, Harry. I welcomed you into my studio, and this is how you repay that hospitality. The confrontation had reached a point of no return. Two men, both successful in their own right, were now engaged in a battle that would define both of their reputations for years to come. And in that moment, everyone in the studio realized that they were witnessing something that would forever change how the world viewed Prince Harry. That Seth's voice, when he finally spoke, carried the weight of someone who had reached their absolute limit. You know what, Harry? You're right about one thing. I do have a comfortable life. I work hard, I treat people with respect, and I've built something I'm proud of. But what you're doing right now, this isn't courage. This isn't truth-telling. This is a man having a public breakdown and trying to drag everyone else down with him. The words hit Harry like a physical blow, but instead of retreating, he seemed to grow more dangerous. A breakdown? A breakdown is what happens when you've been pushed past your breaking point by people who are supposed to love you. A breakdown is what happens when you realize that everything you believed about your family, about your life, about your purpose, it's all been a lie. Then get help, Seth said, his voice now carrying genuine concern beneath the anger. Get therapy. Work through your issues. But don't use my show to burn down your family because you're in pain. Harry's laugh was bitter and hollow. Help? From who? The same institutions that created this mess? The same people who covered up my uncle's crimes? The same family that threw my mother to the wolves and then did the same to my wife? There is no help, Seth. There's only exposure. There's only truth. The mention of his uncle, a clear reference to Prince Andrew, sent another shock wave through the studio. Several audience members were visibly uncomfortable, and Seth's expression shifted to one of genuine disgust. You're talking about serious allegations, Harry. Allegations that have legal implications. You can't just throw around accusations like that without evidence. Evidence? Harry's voice rose to a near shout. You want evidence? I have 40 years of evidence. I have recordings, I have documents, I have witnesses. The only question is whether the world is ready to hear it. The threat was unmistakable, and Seth's face went pale. This wasn't just about family drama anymore. Harry was suggesting he had material that could bring down the entire royal family. Harry, if you have evidence of criminal activity, you should take it to the proper authorities, not to late-night television. The proper authorities? Harry's voice dripped with contempt. The same authorities that have been protecting these people for decades? The same system that let my mother die while they worried about their precious reputation? You really are naive, Seth. You really don't understand how this works. Seth took a deep breath, clearly making a final attempt to salvage something from this disaster. I understand that you're angry. I understand that you feel betrayed. But what you're doing right now is going to hurt innocent people. Your children are going to see this someday. Your wife is going to have to live with the consequences of what you're saying tonight. For the first time since the interview began, Harry seemed to pause. The mention of his children appeared to crack through his rage, and for a moment, something almost human flickered across his face. But it was gone as quickly as it appeared, replaced by something even more disturbing. A cold, calculating look that suggested he had considered this exact scenario. My children will thank me, he said quietly. When they're older, when they understand what I saved them from, they'll thank me for having the courage to tell the truth. They'll thank me for not letting them grow up in the same prison that destroyed their grandmother and nearly destroyed their mother. You're not saving them, Seth said, his voice now carrying a desperate edge. You're traumatizing them. You're creating a legacy of pain and division that they'll have to carry for the rest of their lives. Harry stood up from his chair, his movement so sudden and aggressive that several security personnel stepped forward. Don't you dare lecture me about my children. Don't you dare tell me what's best for my family. You have no idea what we've been through, what we've survived, what we've had to sacrifice just to exist. I know that what you're doing right now isn't helping them, Seth replied, also standing. I know that this conversation is going to follow them forever. I know that you're burning bridges that can never be rebuilt. Good, Harry said, his voice now eerily calm. Let them burn. Let it all burn. The world needs to see what these institutions really are, what they do to people, how they destroy lives to protect their image. And if my family can't handle the truth, then maybe they don't deserve to be my family. The words hung in the air, like a curse. Seth stared at Harry with something approaching horror, finally understanding that this wasn't just a man having a bad day. This was someone who had calculated every word, every accusation, every moment of this confrontation. You planned this, Seth said quietly. You came here tonight planning to do this. Harry's smile was cold and triumphant. I came here tonight to tell the truth. If that makes you uncomfortable, if that threatens your precious show, then maybe you should ask yourself why you're so invested in protecting people who don't deserve protection. I'm not protecting anyone, Seth said, his voice now shaking, with barely controlled rage. I'm trying to maintain some basic human decency. I'm trying to prevent you from destroying yourself and everyone around you on live television. Decency. Harry laughed, but there was no humor in it. You want to talk about decency? Where was decency when my mother was being hounded by photographers? Where was decency when my wife was being driven to suicide? Where was decency when my family chose their reputation over their son's well-being? I don't know, Seth said, his voice breaking slightly. I don't know what happened to your family, but I know that what you're doing right now isn't justice. It's just revenge. Sometimes, Harry said, his voice dropping to a whisper that somehow carried more menace than his earlier shouting. Revenge is the only justice you can get. The studio was completely silent now. Even the camera operators had stopped moving, transfixed by the raw hatred in Harry's voice. Seth looked like he wanted to say something, but no words came. The confrontation had moved beyond anything that could be resolved with television diplomacy. Harry straightened his jacket and looked directly into the camera, his face now composed, but his eyes still burning with rage. To everyone watching at home, remember this moment. Remember that when someone tries to tell you the truth about these institutions, about these people, about what they really do, remember how quickly the walls close in. Remember how quickly the protection systems activate. He turned back to Seth, his expression now one of complete contempt. Thank you for proving my point, Seth. Thank you for showing the world exactly what I'm talking about. With that, Harry walked toward the exit, his movement deliberate and theatrical. But he wasn't finished. As he reached the edge of the set, he turned back one final time, his voice carrying across the silent studio like a final curse. This is just the beginning, he said, his words directed at the camera but clearly meant for a much larger audience. The world is going to learn the truth about these people, about what they've done, about what they continue to do. And when they do, everyone who protected them, everyone who enabled them, everyone who chose comfort over truth, they're all going to have to answer for it. Seth watched in stunned silence as Harry disappeared through the studio doors, leaving behind a wake of destruction that would take years to fully understand. The studio remained frozen for several long moments, nobody quite sure what to do or say after witnessing such a complete breakdown of human decency. Finally, Seth turned to the camera, his face pale, but his voice steady. We're going to take a break, he said quietly. When we come back, we'll have some music for you. But as the cameras stopped rolling and the studio lights dimmed, everyone present knew that they had just witnessed something that would be talked about for years to come. They had seen a man destroy himself and his family on live television, and they had watched a respected host struggle to maintain some semblance of dignity in the face of unprecedented cruelty. The prince had made his point, but in doing so, he had revealed something about himself that no amount of royal training or public relations could ever fix. The mask had finally slipped completely, and the world had seen what lay beneath, and it was not pretty.